Welcome to the TV Street Detective channel. Here we update cases that shock the world. Welcome to one of the darkest mysteries in criminal history. The story of Jack the Ripper In 1888, within the shadowed alleys of London's impoverished Whitechapel district, an elusive murderer unleashed a wave of terror through gruesome killings that remain unsolved to this day. Known to the press as the Whitechapel Murderer, the Leather Apron, and even Red Jack, this figure haunted not only Whitechapel, but also the world, with over 300 newspapers internationally reporting on his horrific act. What's unique about Jack the Ripper is that he may have been the first serial killer bold enough to taunt the police with chilling letters that were both mocking and provocative. But were these letters truly written by the killer himself, or simply a cruel prank by someone else? Join us as we dive into the chilling depths of this case, from his terrifying crimes to the mysterious letters that shook London over a century ago. In the fall of 1888, the Whitechapel district of London became famous throughout England, not only for its crowdedness and poverty, but also for the haunting name of Jack the Ripper. It was a mysterious serial killer, a brutal ghost lurking in the dark alleys of London, spreading terror throughout the city and becoming one of the most famous unsolved cases in history, the appearance of Jack the Ripper. In early August 1888, in the hot and stuffy air of summer, the poor Whitechapel district of London suddenly became filled with creepy rumours about a horrific murder. People began to tell each other about the mysterious and haunting death of a woman named Mary Ann Nichols. Mary Ann Nichols, also known as Polly among friends and acquaintances, was a poor woman without a family, working as a prostitute to make a living. But one dark night, Polly's miserable life came to a brutal and haunting end, the horrifying discovery on Bucks Row. In the early morning of August 31st, a janitor named Charles Cross was walking to work when he saw something unusual in Bucks Row, a deserted and dark alley. As he approached, Cross realized it was the body of a woman lying motionless, blood staining the surrounding sidewalk. Horrified, Cross immediately called the local police. When police officers arrived at the scene, they witnessed a horrifying scene. Mary Ann Nichols's body was torn apart by deep, precise cuts. In particular, her abdomen had been slashed open, and her internal organs were mangled, as if the killer had dissected her for some grisly purpose. These wounds were not random acts of violence. They were done with calculation, with a sickening skill. The cuts were made with a sharp knife and were of a length consistent with a scalpel, raising the possibility that the killer was someone with anatomical knowledge, occult ritual, or unimaginable cruelty. The police and the public could not help but question the motive for the murder. Why would a murderer dissect the body of such an unknown poor woman? Was this simply the violent act of a sick killer, or was he performing some kind of dark ritual? The fact that Mary Ann Nichols's internal organs were so jumbled up as to be deliberately rearranged led many to believe that this was no ordinary murder. Some even began to spread rumours that the killer might be involved in secret societies or was practicing a cult. These theories spread like wildfire throughout the Whitechapel area, heightening the fear in the hearts of the people. To them, this was not just a brutal murder, but also a sign of a darkness that was looming over the city, a ghost lurking in the dark alleys, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The panic and horror of the Whitechapel community. The murder of Mary Ann Nichols was the first in the infamous series of Jack the Ripper murders, and also the first that made the people of Whitechapel aware that their area might be targeted by a serial killer. With the brutal characteristics of the case, the anxiety of the people increased as they felt danger lurking in every corner, every dark alley. Whitechapel was already a poor area where crime was common, but the level of brutality of Mary Ann Nichols' murder was far beyond anything the people here had ever witnessed. The women who worked as prostitutes in the area became worried and panicked. They no longer dared to work at night, or if they did, they only went with groups to avoid becoming the next victim. For other residents, especially the poor who lived in cramped housing, Whitechapel became a living hell. They began to look at each other with suspicion, fearing that the killer might be someone they knew, someone who walked these narrow streets every day. The police investigation and initial helplessness. The London police quickly got involved, but the case of Mary Ann Nichols posed a huge challenge. There were no direct witnesses, no description of the killer, and the few clues left at the scene consisted of professional cuts and unimaginable savagery. Despite their best efforts, the police could not determine the motive for the case and had no clue as to the identity of the killer. London's top detectives were called in to investigate, but they were stumped. They knew this was a case unlike any they had ever seen before. They had never encountered such a brutal, organised, and well-planned crime. With the deep, precise cuts, the police suspected that the killer might be a doctor, someone with a deep knowledge of the subject. Memories of anatomy or working in the medical field. However, despite questioning and monitoring a series of suspects, they still could not find anyone who fit the vague description of the killer. The spread of terror throughout London news of this horrific murder spread not only within Whitechapel, but quickly throughout London, and even to other parts of England. The press simultaneously reported the case of Mary Ann Nichols, and the nickname Whitechapel Murderer began to appear in the newspapers. People everywhere followed the developments of the case with fear and curiosity. The brutality of the killer, combined with the police's inability to find him, made the image of an invisible murderer haunt everyone. People of London, especially the poor areas, began to panic and lose faith in the police. Whitechapel became a symbol of fear, a cursed area where a malevolent spectre lurked to take the lives of anyone unlucky enough to cross his path. For prostitutes, the fear was even greater, knowing that they could become the next target at any moment. On September 27, 1888, a strange letter arrived at the Central Bureau of Investigation in London. The letter was unlike any letter the police had ever received before, short, cold, and terrifying. It was signed Jack the Ripper, a name that would later haunt the city and become a symbol of one of the most mysterious killers in history. The letter not only described in detail how the crime was committed, but also contained irony, mocking the abilities of the London police. Jack the Ripper directly challenged the investigators as a game between him and the representatives of justice. The gruesome content and challenging tone. In the letter, Jack the Ripper described with glee the mutilation of his victims, as if this was a kind of art that he was proud of. He wrote about cutting open the stomach, removing internal organs with precision, proving that he had a deep knowledge of anatomy, or at least had studied how to dissect corpses. His tone was not only calm, but also full of irony as he mocked the police for their helplessness. "Can you find me?" A challenging question that Jack the Ripper left behind, as if to confirm that he could appear at any time, carrying out these horrible acts without anyone being able to touch him. The letter also contained a cold threat that he would continue to kill. He wrote that killing was more fun than you can imagine, and that he was enjoying the fear he was spreading throughout the city. He vowed that he would not stop, and that more brutal deaths would follow. It was a chilling warning from a psychopath who relished the fear and suffering of others. The next letters, and the tension of the investigation, the letter signed Jack the Ripper, was not the only one the police received. In the following weeks, a series of similar letters continued to appear, each containing content that mocked and ridiculed the police and the public. These letters not only caused confusion, but also made the case more mysterious and complicated. The London police, under pressure from the public and the media, were faced with an unprecedented challenge, not only to find a serial killer, but also to deal with someone who liked to challenge and toy with the legal system. One of the most shocking letters was sent in October, titled "From Hell." It came with a gruesome gift, a human organ, supposedly from his most recent victim. The letter was short and mocking, as if mocking the inability of the police to protect the public. "I like the feeling of death and you will never find me," he wrote. The horror of the letter and the gift that accompanied it heightened public fear. Some began to fear that Jack the Ripper was not just an ordinary killer, but a demonic being, an embodiment of evil that no one could stop. doubts about the authenticity of the letters. The letters signed Jack the Ripper left police and investigators baffled. Many theories arose, including that the letters were just pranks by someone who wanted to attract attention. The growing panic led many to suspect that the letters might have been written by an imposter to cause confusion and create fear. Journalists and citizens began to get involved in the case, offering their own analysis and speculation, most of which were unfounded. However, the writing style and detailed descriptions of the crime scene in the letters made it impossible for the police to completely rule out the possibility that they were written by the real killer. Some of the words and details were so realistic that only a murderer could have. Unknown. For example, descriptions of the way the victims were cut open and the cuts on their necks matched what the police found at the scene. This led them to seriously consider the possibility that Jack the Ripper was actually sending them challenging letters. Unsolved mystery and everlasting obsession. In the end, despite their best efforts, the police were unable to solve the mystery behind the letters and the identity of Jack the Ripper. The letters signed Jack the Ripper remain a big question mark in history, and to this day, more than 100 years later, investigators are still unsure whether they were actually written by the killer or just a sick joke by someone. Whatever the truth, the Jack the Ripper letters have become an indispensable part of the legend of history's most mysterious serial killer. They not only created a horrifying image of a cold-blooded killer, but also left a lesson about human powerlessness in the face of mysteries beyond our ability to understand and solve. Jack the Ripper, through those challenging letters, became a symbol of a fear that had no form, no limits, forever haunting the people of London and a reminder of the darkness hidden in the human soul. Thank you for watching. Subscribe. Hit the subscribe button to get the latest videos. Like and share with more people. Comment your thoughts, comments, or suggestions to help us improve. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel to explore shocking true crime stories, unsolved mysteries, and secrets yet to be uncovered. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss any new videos. Your support means everything to us and helps us continue bringing exciting, high-quality content. Thank you for joining us on this journey.